everyone. I'm very excited about this episode of the podcast with Dr. Shruti Kohli, who is currently head of data science and innovation at the Innovation Lab at DWP. DWP is a Department for Work and Pensions in the UK, and Shruti leads the entire innovation across the department. She previously was a lead data scientist at DWP Innovation Lab, and she got her PhD in machine learning and specializes a lot in data science, design thinking, cloud computing, and other techniques. She has a very interesting take on the so-called Center of Excellence for DWP and how this may look like and what the key pillars are and how it can be enabled. So I'm very excited about this series of podcasts, and welcome Shruti. Hi, Shruti. It's really great to see you on the podcast today.
Thanks, Nicolai. Looking forward for the podcast.
So we are joined today by Don Brown, who is the field CTO at Synthesized. Don is joining us from the US, Atlanta, and it's very interesting place. So we basically launched our operations in the US as a company, and Don is leading some of the field work from our office there. But hi Don, and great to see you in the podcast.
Thanks. Nice to speak with you, Shruti.
Cool. And it's meant to be fairly interactive, and we have a number of topics we want to discuss with you. You're obviously a very prominent figure in the data innovation space in the UK and beyond. So primarily, you currently lead the Innovation Lab at DWP. So really have enjoyed collaborating with you on different initiatives, but really as part of this podcast, we want to discuss a number of topics. One of them is definitely the so-called Center of Excellence and what the challenges are, what the bottlenecks are, then discuss data as a potential fuel to accelerate innovation across a number of innovative projects, and how we think about topics such as data governance, data quality, data compliance. And I think both of you, so Don and Shruti, can share some really valuable stories and really valuable points there as well. And finally, we wanted to touch on the so-called synthetic data, which is the new way to think about data and think about information for innovation, and hear kind of your sort of experience with that, and maybe some points from Don as well. But Shruti, just to kick this off, do you want to quickly tell us about your work at DWP and what your current focus is, and what the maybe some notable successes you can share with us from your kind of from your experience?
Yeah, sure, Nicolai. As you guys know, I'm leading the DWP Innovation Lab. It's almost like 5 years in the department, where I've moved to a couple of teams and landed over here. When I came over here, it was called Dojo, a tech accelerator, which was more focused on how we could really trial and test new technologies and where it could be used in the department. If I see back, we have really evolved here. Now, when we have evolved, we are till now, I really call again ourselves technology accelerator, but we are now more focused on how we could really solve complex problems in the department, how we could really support our colleagues who are providing better services, and how we, as an experimental space, can help them by doing a lot of technology scanning, experimenting with them, aligning them with the user needs, working in an agile design thinking session with our colleagues, and seeing what is the art of possible that we could really, build with them, the prototype that we build. So even though we don't do production things, we are more in experimental place where we build prototype. But I've really seen that how the kind of projects that we have done have really helped our colleagues to enhance their vision that, okay, what else is possible, which was like, and many times some of our findings that really provides them a lot of learning, and that opens up their vision, what they want to keep in their future roadmap. And sometimes it is like failing fast. We say this is not for us, and this really saves a lot of time, effort of our colleagues who may be thinking in the same direction, but by that quick experiment. So that is something like, is a kind of a success where we really work to see what are the best ways through which we deliver our services. But at the same time, we make sure that if something is not for us, we are able to quickly find out if that works. I hope this answers your question.
And Shruti, so in terms of the innovation at DWP, there are so many things we can focus on, so many different projects, so many different initiatives. How do you currently prioritize innovation, and what the current focus is in terms of you working on different initiatives?
So what I really feel as of now, where the innovation lab is working, we are very much aligned with the strategic objective of the department. So when what we do is we do a lot of external horizon scanning to understand how they could really help in meeting the department's strategic objectives. For example, data sharing. Data sharing had been had been something which is really important to really provide improved services to the citizen, because that really helps you to make your database decisions. But as of now, it's really hard if we are not able to share the data. And as in public sector department, it is very tricky to share that sensitive data. So what can be done in that space? So we did a couple of projects in this particular space to do experiment with variety of privacy enhanced technologies to see what are the pets which could really work for the department. So you name your encrypted homomorphic encryption, you talk about differential privacy. We really went exploring. We didn't find much around that. And that really made us do something really a big experiment in synthetic data. So that is one of the key area that we had been looking. And also we had been looking how we could really give citizens control of their data. Are there some technologies available in the market? And that led us to experiment with data pods, where we really did an experiment with our own colleagues and tried to find out that, okay, how data pods could really give citizens that empowerment, that how they want to use their data and how it could be connected with other OGDs. So that was an experiment, another that really gave a lot of learning and what can be done enhancing that vision.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that innovation needs data. I guess you agree with that statement, but also we see a lot that data needs innovation, and the way we treat data, the way we share data, the way we provision data needs to be innovated, because traditional techniques such as data anonymization have some limitations, and also they can only work when you have clear access to a regional data set, but sometimes you really need to create completely new data points. And I think that definitely makes sense. By the way, in terms of those, use cases, what are the notable successes you could share with us in terms of you using data for innovation and development?
Yeah, so let me talk about the synthetic data. Like we started with a SAIL program that was like synthetic data applied innovation, applied analytics innovation lab program, where we really wanted to see how good fit is synthetic data for the department. And if you remember, Nicolai, when we did that, you guys also participated in that particular challenge, where we really wanted to see how good this is. Down the road, like if I see in the last 1.5 years, it has really boosted us, given us a confidence that yes, this is something could really help the department to resolve some of the challenges near data. For example, if we really want to test some new technology, we cannot expose our own sensitive data to it. thus synthetic data beds can help us in that particular space. If we want to go externally and collaborate with other universities or invest in crowdsourcing innovation, we cannot expose our own data. Is synthetic data for us in that particular space? We went ahead and we did like a data challenge with Alan Turing, because for synthetic data we wanted both an academic as well as industrial validation, and this really boosted us our confidence that yes, there could be something that we done, and that really helped us to create a little more awareness, not only in the department but also in other OGDs, that that is some area where we should really build some capability. And I even took this particular idea to civil service data challenge, where it was accepted and we worked till one level. So what I would say is that major successes, first step is to have a confidence yourself that yes, it is going to work. The second success was to create that right awareness where you make your colleagues trust that, okay, let's try it out again in an experimental place. And when we did experiment again, we have really found that yes, there are some challenges still there, and then and those challenges are around the governance of this particular data, and also how much iterations are required to get the right fit, right size synthetic data for your need. And again, how much how can you trust how much secure it is, so it has really helped us to nail down what are the questions we need to answer now, so that we could really get the eat the fruits from there. And I think that was a kind of conversation, Nicolai, I wanted to do with the department, with you guys, is see how we can get good answers for this that builds us a trust over there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we have the right person on this podcast, Don Brown, who actually specializes in security and data. So Don, do you maybe quickly tell us a bit more about maybe similarity of challenges you see across the use case, which Shruti just mentioned, which is creating data for innovation, making sure data is secure, and maybe share some of your kind of stories and your experience, because you've really been on both sides of actually trying to get access to data for innovation, but also right now on working a lot with companies, providing them data for innovation. So that's super, super interesting, I think.
Yeah, and I've also been the third pillar in that, which is the security guy that prevents people from getting access to data. And so just going through kind of a brief history, as Nicolai mentioned, I've worked both on the engineering side, the security side, as well as kind of the field sales side, all very, very different in their kind of concept and perception of data. I actually started my career in 1992 working with a test team in IBM, and remember using Load Runner and stuff like that to actually produce our test data sets back in those days. And it was a very, very highly manual process driven by a GUI that me and my buddy named Ming were in charge of running once a week or once a month, depending on the particular data set. So fast forward 30 years now, and we find ourselves in a very, very different place. So I think the way that the primary kind of valves and value propositions that I see for synthetic data and test data now is so different for a couple of reasons. The first being the move from waterfall to agile completely changed the game in terms of people's need of test data, how they use it and how they leverage it. And then second, what we're also seeing almost simultaneously is the advent of machine learning models and their placement inside of applications, not just outside of applications in kind of a data science area or a statistician's area or actuaries, depending upon your particular industry. And so we now live in a world where people need data, actually test data actually in real time, and they need it curated. And they also would prefer not to talk to people like me in a former life when I was the CISO at a group CISO at Ford. And so where I think we find ourselves is this kind of neat confluence of a bunch of different areas of tech kind of coming together all simultaneously. Synthesized now has the ability to, via an API, drop all of these sorts of requests, be it for machine learning models, application test data, what have you, into your CI/CD pipelines and allow you to get programmatic access to that data rather than have the junior intern like me that did it for years from a GUI. Why that's important, other than you don't have a junior person generating test data for advanced ML projects, is velocity, right? And standardization. So I can, at whatever velocity and even more importantly, whatever frequency I need for a particular use case, demand synthetic data on the fly. But more likely, I'm going to have it produced by some sort of CI/CD pipeline. It gets dropped into a some sort of model management tool like an H2O or something like that. And it doesn't know the difference. We're also kind of at a place where people are trying to figure out still how to measure developer productivity. Having run several teams of engineers in my career, I've found most of the metrics therein to be mostly valueless. Like lines of code is obviously valueless. Really, the things that I think about when I think about developer productivity, and this is consistent across both data science projects and applications, is what is the time it takes from beginning to end, cycle time, for you to create an application and take it to production. Not give me an MVP in production, delivering with fully qualified production data pipelines. All of your instrumentation has been done. You've gotten past all of the security hurdles. And typically that for most enterprise organizations, who we deal with, is going to be 6 months to a year at best. And then that's anecdotal data, but I have been asking fairly specifically over the last year. On the data science side, it actually takes even longer and is more expensive because those people tend to be more expensive. And so, again, somewhat anecdotally, it's somewhere between 12 and 18 months for an enterprise to take, call it a fraud model or a churn model from ideation to production, and costs somewhere between $1.5 and $3 million all in. So given that, right, and what we're focused on here is delivering capabilities, we now have the ability to give people this data in a pipeline and that they've never had before. And we actually generate this data using an AI, which is kind of interesting because you're also feeding the data to an AI. We sit at a place where we've never been before in terms of our capabilities to deliver data. Now it's up to the enterprises and companies like Synthesized to figure out how the enterprises can consume this. And so going back to the original question, which is actually about center of excellence, to me, centers of excellence are not about delivering specific technologies. They are about teaching enterprises, or helping, I shouldn't say teaching, helping enterprises consume bleeding edge technology into what are traditionally very risk averse organizations, and risk averse for good reasons. And so when we think about problems within a center of excellence that we're trying to solve, it's all about that developer productivity. But more specifically, teaching them to fish and getting those developers engaged early in the life cycle, designing a program that allows them to cycle through both applications and data science modeling with repeatability. And so there are certain phases that you need to go through for every step, and then you kind of layer on the people as you go. And so each iteration should be, the first iteration is obviously generally taught by a vendor or someone in academia, but each subsequent iteration needs to be led by more and more people internally. And that's how you gain competence. It's the only way I've ever seen it work, quite frankly, especially at the high end of organizations. And none of this is rocket science or anything new. So it's more about rigor and process and helping people understand the capabilities, and then teaching them how to spread those capabilities within the organization, not just keeping it within a specific silo.
And Don, yeah, I think you mentioned something around, which is very important, which is the Innovation Center of Excellence. The reason it's such an interesting concept is because innovation has historically been very difficult to measure. And it's for various reasons, because we need a framework in place, we need some processes in place. But what's very nice is this framework of Innovation Center of Excellence really allows us to combine all of that, equip with the right inputs, equip with the right variables in order for us to achieve the right results and outcomes from innovation. But yeah, Shruti, so really wanted to kind of touch on this with you because I know you're extremely passionate about this idea for DWP. What are the key blocks, in your opinion, for an innovation center of excellence at DWP? So what would be sort of an ideal North Star, and what those blocks, in your opinion, are?
Sorry, Nicolai, when you are saying blocks, you are talking about the blockers.
More about like fundamental pillars of a center of excellence. So, which is, it can be, people, it can be data, but ultimately, what are the important pillars of ideal center of excellence for DWP in your opinion?
So yeah, Nicolai. So as I'm running a innovation lab, I really feel like we need to have that center of excellence where we could really prove the different technologies. We could really prove that what good looks like. And most of this can be done only if you have got a good flow of data, which is not possible. Like, for example, in the innovation lab ourselves, we don't work on real data. Like, it is a total non-prod environment. So I really feel like the most important block or the key stage is to have an access to synthetic data beds, the kind which is I would say insensitive and intelligent data, where we could really plug and play different technologies, different tools, and as Don mentioned, create those testing environments where we could really, really test our services. Second, I think the most important block to build is to build that particular trust and assurance. And I think that will come through the governance process. That for this particular center of excellence, even if we are using synthetic data, how the governance is going to work, and how we could really validate the reports that are provided by, experts like you. That gives us the trust that yes, this is what we need, and we could fully trust the system. And the third, I think the most important thing is to create that. I had been like I have already been doing, but again, creating that awareness, because when these center of excellence, they work, they could prove their outputs if by showing it, not by telling, right? And for that, we need that particular awareness that what kind of data we are using and how we are using it. And it is not just a simple fabricated data. So it is, although I'm talking about data and data again and again, but because I feel that is the fuel for testing anything, for doing any prototyping, for testing any technology, for doing any external collaboration, for doing any internal collaborations. So I really see that if we are able to sort out these things, and majorly all of this lines to one thing, how we could really get the confidence within the department that yes, that's something could really help us out, and it is secure, foolproof. If that helps.
And Shruti, so in terms of the final destination, so when do we know it's successful? How do we define success from such a center of excellence?
So if we are able to do if we are able to mine the opportunities from data, as of now, when we talk about decision making, if we are able to bring our colleagues to the space that data-driven decisions are made. The data is not just in hand of some data scientists, but we have got that intelligent, synthetic, secure data, good fit enough that, even the policymakers are able to make the right decisions, not within the department, but also you are able to collaborate outside. I think that will really give us a very powerful data-driven platform to make the right decisions, and all in a secure way, because no one is using any sensitive data. I would really see that as one of the
And Shruti, so in terms of the metrics and users, who would be using it, and what metrics would you be looking to optimize with regards to the center of excellence?
So the users, I think, will be the employees, the colleagues at all level, the working level, at the, as I said, at the decision maker level, who are working, and even if you are working with third party, those could be the users. And in terms of success measures, I think the first thing is how secure it is, how accurate it is. That these are the two things that really define the success here. As we did a recent process mining project, and we did a brilliant work with you guys, where some the data that we had developed, we asked you guys to synthesize it in the similar way. It took some good iterations, but it then showed that yes, this is something achievable, but we need to have some things ready, like that particular problem statement ready, and we need to do a number of iterations. So I really feel like getting to the point where accuracy, utility, and security, these three are balanced. That is the way I will measure the success, if it helps.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so one of the metrics, I guess, if I hear you correctly, would be the usage. So we want to make sure that we maximize the amount of users on the platform. We minimize time to data. We maximize the amount of data being available, and also projects being launched by those users with that data. And of course, we want to make sure it's kept secure, it's kept compliant, and it's scalable. So we want to make sure that it's scalable across the organization and it's an enterprise ready. So Don, from your experience, how common are these challenges? And so because like Don, you've spent a lot of time at Cloudera helping companies build these so-called centers of excellence. How do you normally proceed with such a complex project where a number of stakeholders involved, number of metrics involved? And how do you think about approaching this and potentially with somebody like DWP, an entity like DWP?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to take into account is Shruti's point from a second ago, which is you need people using the platform, because if you don't have people using the platform, it's not going to be a platform for very long, even if it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. That is really, really important to realize within an enterprise versus kind of a startup environment where results are the be-all, end-all of everything. And so what I typically like to do is try to figure out a problem that is both approachable, but also has a lot of impact within the organization, preferably something with a lot of visibility as well. This was not done as part of a center of excellence effort, and there are lots of papers written about it, so I'm not violating any NDAs here. But Cloudera made its name back in 2010 because it improved search relevancy for eBay by about 3%. And so that was $100 million problem for them at the time, and $3 million ROI inside of a few months. But more specifically, it gave them visibility into what could be done. Like, what's the art of the possible? How can we move the needle in small ways in the business that actually moves it in really large ways in terms of revenue or other types of impact? And so when I look at use cases and when I look at project sponsors, and the project sponsors are also incredibly important. They need to be supportive and interested and be willing to champion you, assuming that you hit success. And so you find a project sponsor, ideally, that is going to help be your advocate internally. And then you help both make them and their team as successful as you possibly can be. Because what you need to look at that as a software vendor, right? We're internally at that point likely have already sold you, if it's being implemented as a platform. It's now an internal selling proposition. Then everyone needs to be on board with kind of that. That's the motion that's being taken. And even more specifically on the back end of that. So COE generally takes a pretty common pattern of training, requirements gathering, project management, architecture, delivery, lather, rinse, repeat. And so what you really want to be focused on is bringing more people into the fold through each successive iteration. The project manager can generally remain constant because they can usually do 5 to 10 simultaneously, depending on the complexity of the project. But the engineers that cycle through, those are the most important people. One of the things that I learned early on that I didn't know coming into kind of this COE process is one of the best places you can get feedback, and it tends to be from the quietest engineers, is those engineers that are working on the product that aren't voicing a lot of concerns, but also aren't like leading the charge in terms of implementation, because those tend to be the people that either don't get it or are having issues kind of with the uptake. And so focusing on that cohort of users rather than everyone likes to talk to the people that are the best and the most vocal. Those are not the people that you actually need to get successful. And they're almost always successful on their own. You have to focus on the people that in kind of the middle and help them get skilled up. And then they become that champion to the rest of the organization.
That totally makes sense. And it sounds like there is a recipe to to implement. And fair to say, so this is also public information that we are currently partnering with Deutsche Bank on helping them accelerate digital transformation with synthetic data, and really looking to help with building the so-called center of excellence. And you obviously have a lot of expertise, and I think there is a lot of similarity across different center of excellence, data hubs, data platforms. And one of the key enablers is actually data. And Shruti, you mentioned that how hard it is to get access from data owners and stakeholders at DWP. So we spoke about synthetic data. That's obviously the work we had done together, and that was vetted by the Alan Turing Institute previously, and now, of course, on the new project as well. But I'm curious, like, what's your take on synthetic data and what other applications you see across DWP? Because, of course, one of the main fuels for the Center of Excellence is data. And if you want to maximize the amount of projects, we, of course, want to make sure that the data is available. But just wondering, in terms of the scope of those projects, what else can you see currently, and what use cases do you think are going to be unlocked when this Center of Excellence is built?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nicolai. Previously, when I did the sales program, when we started exploring synthetic data, we really wanted to see that how we could really do some explainable AI kind of some experiments in the lab and see, will it help us to develop some augmented intelligent tools that could really make our colleagues more empowered when they are making some decisions. So that was area that, how we could quickly come. Again, it is more about the decision making, that how we could really improve the decision making within the department, and something around the spotting the trends, so that we can help the citizen better or identify frauds and errors sooner. Because if we are able to create those connected synthetic data beds, we will be able to find better links, and maybe that could really help us to find those trends or frauds better. That is one area I really feel that could really help. And then how we could really, as John said, quickly and cheaply do some good digital testings of different scenarios where we are on intelligent test data beds rather than the kind of test data we are using now. And again, it is more like how we could really onboard the innovations that are happening around, because if we have to onboard those particular capabilities within the department, this could be really this kind of synthetic data bed capabilities. If it solves the purpose of keeping our data secure, but helping us to build these capabilities, we could really onboard them through crowdsourcing innovations. So these were the 3-4 trends that we really spoke about, and we continue speaking. And I know there were some proof of concepts that have happened within the department, and I know even other OGDs are doing it. So I really hope that we get that confidence level to invest and develop that center of excellence level at some point.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And yes, I think having access to data is I guess, like needless to say, a key enabler for innovation. And there can also be some very quick, low-hanging fruits, like quick wins. But of course, there is the overall strategy which needs to be implemented to enable the use of the right data sets across different teams and across different units as well. In terms of like adoption, so what, in your opinion, needs to be done to accelerate adoption of this? Because we kind of understand that, okay, so we need to get there, but there are some roadblocks. What, in your opinion, can help us accelerate it?
So apologies, I will keep on repeating it. I think it's more doing those communications and awareness to bring people on board and giving them those satisfactory answers around the governance, security, risk, because being public sector, that is our major worry. I think getting those right answers to the right people who have got who could really then help us to enable and develop, that is more important. So I will stress on the same things again, first is awareness, communication, and second, giving them the confidence that yes, it is secure, it is reliable, it is accurate, and it will do the job without exposing the original data. And again, that will happen by giving them a lot of proof points, by developing those platforms and giving them the proof points. So that kind of pilots may help, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. And that's normally how we also like to get, how we support normally our partners, like working together on adoption, working together on awareness. And yes, so definitely have a lot of expertise there. Again, no, that makes sense on my side. Don, any comments, any feedback from your side with regards to the topics?
I think to your last question, there is one. I don't think we're talking about two different constituencies within these organizations that are very, very different from one another, that both have interest in synthetic data for entirely different reasons. And so it's important to make sure that I hesitate to say this, but there is somewhat of a category creation going on in the synthetic data world right now. And synthetic data has been around for at least 50 years, maybe longer, in the statistics world. And it has a very specific connotation in that world that it doesn't necessarily carry over to all of the others. And so when you talk to application engineers, what leads is we can get really compliant data so that you don't have to worry about whether you're going to be operating outside of GDPR or what have you, and we can get to that to you quickly. That's great. It's table stakes, to be honest, on the application testing side, because really what you're trying to do, if you're an application developer, is get better test coverage, right? Like in the interest, I'm just trying to make sure that my application performs as well as it possibly can in all possible scenarios. I don't necessarily care if I do that with data or if I do that with hamsters on a wheel. I'm trying to optimize for code coverage behind the scenes. This is one technique to do so. And so making sure they understand how synthetic data is going to move the needle for the actual developers is really, really important. On the AI and ML side, it's actually even better. Again, the privacy and compliance side of it is table stakes. And just to give an illustration of why I think it's table stakes, one of the primary use cases that we have found, especially in large financial institutions, because of the lead time required to get access to data, is just synthesize me something as fast as possible. Ignore the quality of the generation itself. We don't care about privacy. We don't care about statistical quality up front. We'll get there. But I just need to get something in my hand that looks roughly like the structure that my data scientists will get in their hands as quickly as possible. 6 weeks from now, we'll give them the fully instrumented, fully built out, privacy preserving, statistical property preserving data set. But that gives them agility, right? And again, I still say that's table stakes, because at the end of it, what we can also do on that side is provide better business outcomes. So that through that, whether that's through rebalancing, through standardization of imputation, doesn't really matter. But what we have found very consistently, and the amount varies, but is an improvement actually in model quality using synthetic data. And that is something that everybody can kind of hang their hat on because it's an easy ROI to prove. You don't have to worry about developer productivity metrics or anything like that. You can say, we improved this churn model by 5%, and churn for us is a $200 or $20 million problem. So we know that we just returned the business $1 million a year. There you go, right? And that, like, very, very easy to kind of prove and champion that value out. So that's my 2 cents on kind of how it needs to be introduced to an organization, and I think how you can successfully bring it in and tell people, yes, we're going to do things differently, and some of it is table stakes, but at the end of the road, your metrics are going to improve both from a development standpoint and from a business outcome standpoint.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Shruti, any comments, feedback from your side? Any points you'd like to make?
I will just stress on what Don said, that I think it's my experience is it's always important to take the first step and work on the agile way, and then scale it by understanding it more. So I really look forward to see that how we could take that first step within the department and what needs to be done, and yes, how we could really leverage on this particular technique that could really solve a lot of problems if we get it if we get it right. I'm looking forward for that first step, how we can do it.
Cool. I'm definitely looking forward to it on our side too. So there is some work to be done, and really excited about it. So we definitely have a lot of experience in the problem, and it's not a new one. So just need to make the first step and get there. So cool. Shruti, I know we are almost there with time. So thanks so much for your input. This has been incredibly valuable and insightful conversation, and definitely a new one around the Center of Excellence compared to the podcast we've previously made. So I think it's a very unique points we have made here. So just very, very excited about it. Thanks so much, Shruti, for your time. It's been great to have you on the podcast. And thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So it's great pleasure to be speaking with Shruti on this podcast, on this episode of podcast about the so-called Center of Excellence with synthetic data and how it can be enabled across DWP Innovation Lab. So it was really great to hear various points and various questions from both sides of the table. So hope you really enjoyed it and look forward to delivering your new episode of the podcast.